Hey everyone, it's Desiree, and I am here with Simon Says Stamp, and we are going to celebrate the release of Lucky to Know You. This release is now live, and if you're curious to see everything that's in the release, please just make sure you click on the link below, and that'll take you to the whole collection. The piece that I'm going to be working on is called Daisy Bouquet. I'm going to kind of change that up just a little bit. And you can see it is a stencil, a 6x6 stencil. So lately, I've been seeing a lot of neat videos, actually. And this is what the stencil looks like. So it's kind of cool. So there could be like mod flowers, or they can be daisies, or anything else that you want. But I've been seeing a lot of videos where people are taking their stencil, they're putting them down on a piece of paper, and they're using like a no-line coloring ink, or like antique linen distress ink, and watercoloring over these parts here. It very much intrigued me and very much inspired me. So what I did was I'm going to use my toned tan mixed media. Again, this is 184 pounds. It can and does come in a thinner weight, but I like this one because of the thickness. Don't have to back it onto any other cardstock for the front of my card. And I am going to use my Ink on 3 ink and a sponge dauber, a finger sponge dauber. And what I want to do, instead of doing watercoloring, for those of you that have seen any previous videos, my media of choice are colored pencils. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tape this down, and then I'm going to use my sponge dauber and my ink, and I'm going to fill that in onto my cardstock here. Because then I'm going to come in with some colored pencils. Now, I have no idea what this is going to look like. But I think it's going to be cool. So I'm going to take this, and I'm going to take my sponge dauber. And I'm just going to go in. Now, I did try this where I just take the ink pad and I go down. It wasn't going through. This seemed to be a lot better to use a sponge dauber. Now, I am trying to go up and down as much as possible to make sure I don't want the ink to go under the stencil. I want the images to be extremely, crisp. And I'm hoping that they're going to stay there for a little bit, because it's going to take a while. But I'm just going through, putting my finger dauber into my ink pad, and then pushing down onto the open areas of the stencil. Now, this is a pretty big panel, so I'm sure I'll be cutting this down once I'm done coloring the image. So instead of using watercolors, which you can certainly use watercolors if that's your medium of choice, I'm actually going to use my Prismacolor color pencils. And I've chosen some different colors. Okay, so I think that's all we need. I need to make sure that I keep that sponge dauber with my Ink on 3. And now I'm going to remove my tape. Okay. And then last one. Let's remove the stencil, and now we've got our image going around that. So can you see that? So these are the colors that I've chosen. So we've got a gold, we've got a Wedgwood bluish, I've got a deep rose color, and then of course the green. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to fill in, and there's some other colors that I'll have to choose too for the little tiny bubbles. At least that's what I'll call them. And then of course my centers. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to color over the areas where my ink is. And, of course I'll try to stay in the lines, but, I'm okay if I don't. So I'm hoping that this will work. I'm just saying. So I'm going to come in with my darker, just darken up these areas just to create the blend. And then I just drew across that, but that's okay. Come in with that light color again. And I'm also going to come in with one of my whites. And of course, there we go. Because I just want to come down from the tip with that. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to zoom in to this area, and then I'm going to switch over to a voiceover where I'll show you some, each of the color schemes. I'll show you one of the greens. Yes, I always mark my spot so that I know where to keep my paper. So I'll show you a couple leaves again, and I'm going to show you one of the rose colors, one of the blues, and one of the yellow flowers through this. And then we'll come back to the live talk. So, see you in a minute. Okay, so the video sped up just a little, well, a lot. And we're in voiceover mode. So, when it comes to this technique, this is another way that I'll work with my colored pencils. So, with the fade out ink laid down, I'm then going to come in with my lightest color, put a layer down, and then I'm going to come in with my darkest color to add the shade. Then I'll come in with the white to add the highlight. So instead of using 3, 4, possibly 5 different colored pencils to color a leaf or the image, the flower, whatever we're coloring that day, this is going to show you how to work with just 2 colors, the light and the dark of that one shade, excuse me, and then bringing in the white for the highlight. So you can see with just those 2 greens, I've got the shade where I want it. I've got the mid-tone or the light tone that's coming across. And again, because of the way that I'm using the dark, I'm actually getting a mid-tone in between these two. And it's all within the pressure at which you put down the color. So for the blues, if we look at these blue petals, I'm coming in with the darkest color. I'm laying that down into the center. Then I'm coming in with the lightest tone that I have, the lighter tone of the two. And I'm pulling that in on the top, bringing that down into the darker color. They will blend as you cross over your 2 colors. Now, these 2 colors
have a very wide spectrum, very dark to pretty light. But just because I'm crossing them over or going over all of it with the white, they're actually blending. One of the things that I find I like, and I really like the look of it, is when it comes to florals, and it's especially, matter of fact, it's only, when I color in a floral image, I like that, and I'll call it the scratchy look. All right, I'll see the pencil lines. There will be a blend, but you will see some of those pencil lines. It mimics what alcohol marker colorists do for their flowers. When they color a flower, you can see those flicks. They refer to them as flicks. I'm kind of getting that effect with the colored pencil, but I'm not technically flicking. But you can. I mean, you can flick with a colored pencil. Just don't flick the colored pencil itself like I do. I'm just saying. So you can see how all of that blends. Using only 2 colors of the color family and a white to give in that highlight. I'm going to do the same basic principle. I'm either going to lay down the lightest color completely on the image, then come in with the dark, or I'm going to do with how I did the blue petals, where I put the dark down where I want the shade, then I come down from the top with the lightest color down into the dark, and then I bring in the white to pull it all together. So for this is like I'm going to say it's like a rose color. Now, as always, with all the colors that I used, I will create a color chart or a color card, and I'll have that available to look at on my blog. If you want to know the colors that I used, and I used my Prismacolors for this project. So again, because they're colored pencils, here's the beauty of it. I can put all the dark down in the petals. I can come back around with my light color and come around again and do all that. Now I'm going to come in with the white and do that. To me, that's one of the many beauties of a colored pencil. I don't have to be limited in my space. If I want to skip around, I can. I can always come back. Let's say I just put the dark colors down in that area. I can always come back later and finish that flower. So that is one of the beauties, one of the many beauties for me when it comes to colored pencils. I'm turning these dots that are around this image like into berries, and I'm using a very pale flesh with a red to bring out that color as well. And I'm letting the flesh, the light flesh that I'm using, I believe it's a light flesh, I don't have it in front of me, to be the highlight. I'm not adding any white to those, which you certainly can. I'm working now on a yellow type, and I'm going to call these daisies. These are reminding me of daisies. And these daisies are all going to be the half-petaled daisies. So that's what the rest of these are going to look like. So you'll only see this one more image. And again, the dark went into the shade, the light went all over, and the white is coming in to create the highlight. As I said, I was very much inspired seeing this from other designers on YouTube, and I had to give it a try in pencils. And I found I really did like it, so I think we'll see more of this. Okay, so back to the live voice. Okay, so now we have all of our coloring, and I kind of like that. I think it's different. And again, you have to, look at your stencils to see which
which process would work for this. But I do very much like that look. So again, very much inspired by those that were doing this in watercolor. Hadn't seen anybody do it in colored pencils. I'm sure somebody did, but I was just really inspired to try that technique and how that would work. So I want to get my sentiment on here. And the sentiment I'm choosing is coming from this Simon Says stamp set. It's called Greeting Mix 1, and I'm choosing the sentiment, I believe in you. And I'm just going to stamp that up here in the upper corner. I'm not going to heat emboss. I just want to stamp it. And I think I'm going to use a brown. When I do the no line coloring, I do tend to lean to a brown color for my stamping, or a gray to keep it soft. So I'm going to choose the charcoal brown from Gina K. And I'm just going to stamp that right there. And I'll stamp that a couple times. And I'm okay if it's scratchy looking or not solid looking. Again, when I do that no line coloring, it's not solid. So I'm okay with that, you know, being like that. Okay, now the next thing I want to do is I do want to add some white splatters. So I am going to grab my acrylic block and some white gouache. I'm going to get some water. So add a few drops. And let's grab a paintbrush and mix that up. And we're just going to put a few specks just in and around. Get that black speck out. All right, now this is my backdrop. As a matter of fact, I'm going to let that dry first. Because I need to make my card base. And I'm thinking. Be right back.